A matchup of familiar foes and maybe not exactly the closest of friends yesterday up in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium, starting off a midweek series between the Yankees and the Astros. And it was a ceremonious start for New York. Kyle Tucker actually homered off of our guy, Luis Gil, of course, as we know, in the opening inning against New York for the Yankees, only to respond with 10 runs of their own. The Yanks, as a home money line favorite, hammer Houston in the opening game of this set. 10-3 the victory for New York. Minus 120 the money line favorite. A total of 8.5 does go over in the Astros, Donnie, who, of course, were swept in the opening four-game series between these two clubs to start off this 2024 Major League Baseball season, have continued that trend. 12-23. The record for the Astros at this juncture.
Yeah, now it's getting time where we're not worrying about if the Astros can actually turn it around. We're worried that they're just a bad baseball team at this point because you are what your record says you are. You want to flounder around them first 2-3 weeks of the season, maybe bury yourself 3 to 4 games out of first place, then you can rebound, because those were the conversations that we were having all the way through the month of April. I don't worry about it, buy back in, including myself, because this is a team that we're used to having postseason success. But in order to have postseason success, you got to make the postseason. 12-23, and this is like, they'll eventually turn it around. They're getting bad pitching, which includes Verlander on the mound yesterday, which is one of those guys like, okay, he's going to start the season on the IL, but he'll come back and he'll be our savior once he gets going. 5 innings pitched, 7 earned runs, not good enough. And also vice versa. The New York Yankees at 24-13. You might have thought maybe the Yankees would have been 12-23 with all the bad news coming out of spring training they had, but getting guys like Luis Gil, 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run. He's 3-1 now in the season, Ben, with an ERA sub-3. This is exactly what you're supposed to be doing, what the Astros aren't doing. Their pitchers are giving you nothing here. So if you're going to go out and lose baseball games, or let's just say we got to score 5+ runs on a nightly basis just to win, that's going to end poorly here. The string is running out for the Houston Astros, and I don't know when we call it because, again, there's still a long way to go in the Major League Baseball season. But are the Houston Astros giving us any signs of life at this point? Absolutely not. 12-23, that's pathetic.
Listen, 35 games out of 162. There is a lot of time left for Houston. We are not arguing that point. We understand the length of a Major League Baseball season. But still being 11 games below 500 is a large hole to try to crawl out of. Can Houston do it? For sure. Could they get hot at the end of this month of May and go on a run? Absolutely. Into June and July and August, and then maybe we laugh at these conversations. But it's still a hole to climb out of, and it doesn't seem as though Houston has been capable of doing that so far this year. You bring up the point in the comparison between these two, not just familiar foes, but the two shortest prices to win the American League pennant before this year got started. At one point, separated by 10 cents, after the Yanks had some pessimistic news out of spring training, Aaron Judge's availability, Garrett Cole's availability, they've moved back. It was the Astros plus 360, about $1 shorter than New York entering this Major League Baseball season. Now Houston 7-1, $4 behind the Yankees, who are the American League pennant favorites at 3-1. And the good news for the Yanks, DRS, Garrett Cole is on his way back next month. No update really on Framber Valdez, the ace for the Astros.
Yeah, and that's certainly something to play into because, as we know, the Yankees can also make deals at the deadline to improve themselves. And if you look at the Houston Astros, if they're not really all in at that point, who are they going to go out and get to try to fortify that pitching staff? And even can they even make the playoffs at this point? But if we are looking at the odds, you can see why it sort of makes sense. And yes, the Houston Astros finally falling back to a 7-1 price. But let's just say things sort of turn around for Houston, and they're battling 500, maybe midway through the month of August. You're like, ooh, there's a glimpse that they might be able to make the playoffs. You take a look at the Yankees. Quality ball club, of course, they're a 3-1 price right now and should be there. Baltimore Orioles plus 470 price. Quality ball club, they should be there. Texas Rangers, Seattle Mariners. But if you line these teams up, let's just remove the top 2 teams, Ben. Yankees and the Orioles from the equation. Rangers, Mariners, Astros, Twins, Guardians, Rays. On a day-to-day basis, like, you still give the nod to the Houston Astros. So you can't just completely price them out of the market and say 27-1 right now because they look really bad. And also keep in mind, the American League pennant, Ben, is not won at the end of the regular season. You can be a wild card team, get into the playoffs, win your games, and there you go, being a pennant champion and also maybe a World Series champion. That's why these numbers are a little bit skewed, because we're not betting on what that record is going to be at the end of the regular season. We're betting on, if Houston does turn it around and sneaks into the playoffs, yes, they can do some damage. But I do agree also, 7-1 price, I think it should be more around 10-1 right now with what they're showing, but I understand the capabilities of the Astros, because if they do get this right, they're going to be one of the better teams in the American League. But how long can we keep asking these questions? Is it going to be like, okay, it's only June now, still a couple months left in the season, and they're still hovering around 10 games below 500? Sooner or later, that's going to catch up to you. They better wake up.
Questions are one thing. You start to need answers out of the Astros. Maybe they'll turn it on its head this week up against the New York Yankees. The hottest team in all of Major League Baseball, that's Donnie's Fightin' Phils. The Phillies have won 7 consecutive games, 11 straight at home at Citizens Bank Ballpark, and yesterday hammered, and I mean hammered, the Toronto Blue Jays in the opening game of this series. 10-1, the win for the Phils. They were minus 116, barely a home money line favorite to make it 7 wins in a row. They do that. Pregame total of 8. The Phils go over by themselves.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, too, because the Phillies lost Trey Turner for about 4 to 5 weeks with a hamstring injury, one of the hottest guys in that lineup, and it doesn't seem to matter. And shout out to people out there, the Phillies aren't playing anybody. They're winning easy games. Did you know the ERA leader came into Citizens Bank Ballpark last night at a 1.44 ERA and left with 3 2/3 innings pitched, 7 hits, and 8 earned runs against them here, which included 2 home runs and a grand slam out of Bryce Harper. The Phillies right now, this is what makes us nervous here in Philadelphia. This isn't supposed to take place till late September at this point, and it's happening here in early May. Hold on, man. Don't burn yourself out, guys. Save some of these runs and wins for later. But 26-11 on the season, which includes, Ben, 18-3 in their past 21 ball games.
And when you look at that pennant price, it is getting shorter and shorter for Philadelphia by the day, trying to join that tier of Atlanta and L.A. at the top. A 5-1 price now on the Phils. Bryce Harper, 3 consecutive games with a homer, 3 consecutive games with 3 RBIs at least. Yesterday, 4 ribbies, a perfect 3 for 3 at the dish. Also scored 2 runs. Elsewhere around MLB comes your way next. The Atlanta Braves returned home yesterday after a day off on Monday, getting swept over the weekend out in Los Angeles by the Dodgers. They needed a win, and they got it. The Braves tied at 2 entering the home half of the 8th. Plate 2 in that frame. They win 4-2 as a minus 184 home money line favorite against the Boston Red Sox. Another good outing out of Cutter Crawford for the Sox, who have a couple of good frontline starting pitchers this year, but the Braves desperately needed to bounce back. They do so at home.
Yeah, by the way, Reynaldo Lopez, how about another great performance out of for the Atlanta Braves, who really need this? 5 1/3 innings pitched, 2 runs, but only 1 of those earned. How about his ERA on the season? A 1.53. That's pretty impressive. Now, granted, for about a couple weeks in the season, saying, man, just pencil in the Atlanta Braves for 5+ runs. That's not happening right now, but you still need to pick up games. The Braves are having a very good season at 21-12, but now sit 3 games back of the Phillies just because how astronomically hot they've been over the past 3 to 4 weeks. But you need to stack these victories even against a team like the Boston Red Sox, where we might not have had a lot of expectations coming out of spring training, but they're above average club. And also that game was tied up late, clutch runs in the bottom of the 8th inning to give the Braves the lead. The Braves are in that mode right now is, don't let the Phillies try to run and hide. Get as many wins as you possibly can now while the Phillies are hot, because, again, it's baseball. It's cyclical. Teams are going to cool off. Teams are going to get hot. They're just trying to hang around where the Phillies don't get that 5+ game lead and say, hey, you know what? You're not going to catch us either way at this point. Good victory, and also the Braves doing it, not with the bats, but more of pitching right now, which is pretty impressive.
Donnie, can I intrigue you? In a Philadelphia plus 180 price to win the NL East, the Phils have a 3-game advantage at the top of the division right now in front of Atlanta, and yet the Braves remain a minus 230 favorite to win the National League East.
Yes, I think it makes some sense now. If you were saying to me now, like, oh, no, Strider was only down 2-3 weeks, Ben, he's coming back because we know how dominant of a pitcher he can be, quite frankly, the Cy Young favorite entering into the season. But with him not being there and the Phillies pitching staff being absolutely on fire and healthy, you always look, we know both of these teams can hit. We know they're both quality ball clubs. They'll both be there in the playoffs. But how do you win games during the regular season? Just have a better lineup than the other team on a night-to-night basis. And just about every night, the Phillies go to the mound with a better pitcher, no matter if it's 1-3 through 3 or 1 through 5 of the opposing team's starting pitching roster here. That's what's impressive right now. That's why the Phillies are winning. Yes, the bats are absolutely cranking, but look at the pitching on the opposite side, giving them everything and more here that you can ask for.
Kansas City, our guy Vinny Pasquantino, after a disappointing night for Vinny P, with a couple of RBI shots in the opening game of the set on Monday against Milwaukee, he bounces back on a Tuesday. Now, DRS and myself, a lesser man backs off. They were spurned by Pasquantino, not Donnie and I. We get back on the horse, and he delivers.
Look at that. The excitement so much right there out of Ben's voice for Vinny P that he just couldn't contain the excitement and blew out the airwaves at this point. But also, as excited as we are, here's the great part about what Ben's talking about. The RBI props, which you guys know I absolutely love. When you take RBI props, you don't even care if your team blew a
How dare they try
to
cut me off?
Yeah.
How dare they try to cut me off when I'm talking about Vinny Pasquantino? How dare they? Wi-Fi can't hold me back, but as Donnie said, Willie Adames, 3-run shot in the top of the ninth for the Brewers as they rally to win 6-5.
Yeah, that's the shame of it all. And the point I was making there was, like, if you have an RBI prop, that's a perfect game for you, even though the Royals lost, when typically, how many times back in the day, it's like, that bullpen blew the game for me. By the way, that 3-run shot, there was 2 outs and 2 strikes with nobody on base, where the Royals looked like they were just going to easily get out of the 9th inning, and it turns into a 3-run inning, and they take the loss. That's a tough scene across the board because, say what you want about the Royals, we don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but every game does matter. And the blow that they dropped to 20-16, that's tough. And by the way, the Brewers are a good ball club. Royals should have had that game and blew it late here. Tough one.
Yeah, they certainly did, and they were a home favorite in Kauffman at -130. The Twins were a home favorite up at Target Field, trying to win their 14th game in their last 15, but now it's just 13 of 15 as the Mariners plate 10 in a high-scoring affair against the Twins, 16 combined runs, over 8. They doubled what the pregame total was. Seattle wins outright. Now we go to Cleveland quickly, where the Guardians were a -138 home money line favorite in a divisional duel against the Tigers, and Cleveland also scores a ton against Detroit. Or no, excuse me. It was Detroit scoring a ton against Cleveland. 11-7, the victory for the Tigers. A very competitive American League Central, where the Guardians remain the favorites at +125. DRS, if they didn't interrupt me for Vinny P, you would have had something here on the American League Central.